Greeting, my friends, both new and old. This is Ned again with yet another video for you guys. Today's video is for a gentleman in my clan who was like, "Hey, Ned, I've been having a lot of problems with this deck. Let me know what you think, yada, yada, yada." So I told him that I would play it, use it, let him know kind of what I thought about it. Really, the best way to do this is just through YouTube. So I'm going to go ahead and do this. Hopefully it'll help people when it comes to making a deck, as well as general things on how to use a deck. This deck that he used, we'll show it after this replay. He's in, I forget what arena he is. I want to say he's about 1,000 trophies. So he's not, terrible, but he doesn't have the most trophies in the world. So, and of course, whenever you're around there, there's some cards that are limited to you. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of discuss some of this, because I think some of this is, good for talking about, good for just kind of discussing on good ways to make a deck and some things that really help you to make a deck. He kind of goes through on that right side and trades damage on the tower. Luckily, he's able to out-damage him. If he had had the arrow spells a little bit sooner, I think it would have been, a little bit better. One of the things that our buddy here, Breland, has some troubles doing is, kind of proper defense. On the right side over there were some skeletons coming. There were about 4 of them. And he decided to place his minions, which cost 3 mana, in order to counter some leftover skeletons. Skeletons die super easy to the tower. The best thing you can do with skeletons is one hit and they're dead. So you really want to just let them do their own thing. He tries to go for a push here on both sides, which he does a really good thing on getting that right tower. He just used the minions, which was very, very excellent, and continues on. And one of the things that I think is an important tactic to know for this kind of a deck is how to properly defend and just good elixir conservation. Because when you defend well, you save a lot of elixir. When you save that elixir, you end up with an elixir advantage. Now, you'll see here that he defended, and now he's got a 2 elixir advantage on his opponent. And we're going to keep playing it. And those minions just kind of come through and wipe him out. And he almost loses his elixir advantage. Now, here this guy places, those minions. If he had waited a little bit longer to place those, then the minions and everything would have been in closer proximity to his tower. And rather than his troops dying to the enemy troops, he would have been able to successfully get a better push going, and he would have... See how this guy did it? He places his troops after the baby dragon got in range of the tower. That's what you want to be doing. So now the tower is helping to do damage on that baby dragon. That's really kind of the things you want to be able to be doing. He gets, quite a few troops down, and they're all focusing his giant, which has a ton of hit points. And you really want them focusing that giant, because then you can get all your troops down and up near the tower, so you can get all your damage dealers to the tower. Here he has a bit of an elixir advantage. He places the troops. He has his tanky Valkyrie, getting damage dealt to it. And he's able to kill the baby dragon. And then from there, it's just kind of make a push on and continue on to the tower. So you see how he's built an advantage in troops, as well as an advantage of 1 elixir. He gets all of his troops placed, and he goes for the tower. And, he still has that wave of troops pushing the tanky guys in the front with the damage dealers in the back, and he's able to take that tower for the win. And that's really what you want to see, whether it's inadvertent or deliberate. You always want to develop a wave of troops. So on something like this, you really want to defend. His we'll look at the deck now. I actually built it for myself. This is the deck that he uses. You'll notice that he doesn't really have any low elixir cost troops, which makes it very, very difficult for him to defend. Whenever you're making a deck, you always want some low elixir cost troops. Something like these goblins, something like the skeletons. The goblin horde, or the spear goblins, are an excellent card to use. The arrows are an excellent card to use. But it's always good to have something like that, the archer as well, just for a last minute defense. These guys are excellent against a prince. Even the tombstone works really well because it can pull them into the middle. Once it dies, it spawns, some skeletons. My level gives me 4 skeletons. He doesn't really have much in the way of defense. So when you don't have defensive troops, you really need to let your troops build up, and that's a very important part of this. So as you can see, I use this deck quite a bit. I had a lot of defeats with it because at my level it doesn't really work. It's not a very viable deck at Arena 7, only because it doesn't have any turrets. It has no defensive mechanisms, and at Arena 7 you can't really just go with this is my combo and I need to use this combo. And that's something he was kind of sticking to. Combos are not the best idea for what you need with a deck like this. You ideally want to defend. If you just don't want to waste the elixir, the spear goblins are an excellent opening card just to get damage down. You can get 100 or 200 damage down on the opponent's deck. On the opponent. So you'll see here that I gained a 2 elixir advantage just in defense. And I still have my Valkyrie on the table. This is fantastic for me. And you'll see that I simply reacted to what he did. I destroyed his threat. And now I'm going to counter push. And, that's what you need to be doing. I'm able to get some good damage down on his tower. Unfortunately, he's got the arrows, but I'm able to follow up with the spear goblins. And I took out half of his tower, and I still have that elixir advantage. So those goblins, he gets 1 hit on me with the goblins. So when you have something like that, you don't even want to defend, because you know that the amount of damage is not going to be worth the defense of it. Now, let's say your tower is really low, then you do want to defend. If you are going to attack and do a push, then you really need to use that giant or whatever the tank is and drop it near your towers so you have time to rebuild the elixir and continue on. Now, I dropped the Valkyrie right before everything, and then I dropped my baby dragon, which left me without the elixir for a arrow spell to defeat the horde. But that's okay. I'm still able to take this tower and continue on because, again, I reacted to what he had, and I placed the Valkyrie, which clears troops ahead of my giant. So if he had something like skeletons or goblins, they would die almost immediately with the Valkyrie, and that really helps to allow the giant to get to the turret faster. I use my Valkyrie to protect the hog, and then I use the musketeer just to continue on with that defense. And now I've got a pretty solid push going on already on both sides, a viable threat to both portions of what he's got, and there's not much he can do now. I've got 2 solid things going on each side of the map, and there's very little that he can do. The only thing that perhaps should have been done differently is defending better against that hog, because that hog can be very, very vicious. But to me, at this point, I have been able to get a significant amount of damage down on his main turret, and I can almost 3-tower him with this deck, which is absolutely wonderful. So now here you'll see me actually defend against the hog with the barbarians. Doesn't even get 1 hit on, and now I continue. He has an elixir advantage, and but that's okay. I really want to try and push myself here. Luckily, he misses with the arrows. I have an elixir advantage, so I drop some that troop on the other side to try and kind of, counter push, do my thing. I know time's low. I just want to get that third crown. I don't get it, but that's acceptable. I still continue on my day. Um, so that was one example of how I used it. And again, you'll see, some of my defeats. Here's one. The gentleman had 3 towers. This is really hard to use against towers. Here's another defeat with another cannon. And, just really difficult. Again, more buildings, really difficult. Plus, he's got the wave clear. This isn't a deck that's for, late arenas, but it can still be pretty viable. You just have to really learn how to manage your elixir, and that's something that I'm trying to work on as well. It's a process of learning, and it's a process of learning to implement it. You just kind of have to keep a clear mind when you're going on, and when you don't have those low-cost troops that can be used for some form of defense, then you really need to be careful with how it is you continue on with your day. I decided to go ahead and go on to that left side to try and kill this guy. And there's not much I can do, but that Valkyrie does a lot of damage to my tower, or to his tower, which is always good and makes me happy. He's got the goblin barrels, which I quite frankly haven't seen in a really long time. But I go ahead and take them out. Air troops are always good against that bomber tower. But anyways, luckily that mini dragon gets going on that tower. And I defend against that hog again. And he uses his hogs to kill me. It is what it is. But again, you'll see that I just kind of wait here. I don't really want to attack, especially while he's got that tower up. Because, it's just going to attract my troops. If I do attack, then I'm going to wait for it to die down so that when my giant gets up there, my giant has already continued on its way. You'll see also that I've got both towers down to half health, and all he's got is 1/3 of that right tower, which is marvelous. The musketeer does great damage against the baby dragon. It's an absolutely wonderful troop. So I like it, and I defend against that tower a little bit by trying to place that baby dragon, and I finally am able to get it. But yeah, so a lot of this is just learning how to push, how to do this correctly, and how to defend. I mean, you've got those freaking arrows. They just do so much work to the minion horde. It's really annoying, really frustrating. So again, I defend more against him. And again, it's all defense, and then you'll see that when I defend, I'm able to push. Unfortunately, I can't do too much, but I can at least get to the tower, and that is wonderful. Unfortunately, he kind of takes out some of those goblins, which are what you need against the tower. And anyways, I'm going to speed this up. Well, no, I'm not. I'm going to slow it up. But you'll see that a lot of it, I'm not wasting elixir, but at the same time, I'm just placing kind of tanky troops that will allow me to counter push. Because that's what I want to do, is I just want to counter push, keep my troops alive, and then push. So at this point, I noticed that his bomber tower was kind of low, so I went ahead and placed my giant. And unfortunately, he's got another one. But the rest of my troops are now focused on his tower. I get them both killed with the musketeer and the giant. And again, most of this was just counter pushing, and I'm able to get that final tower. So remember, you always want, when you have high cost cards predominantly, these aren't even high cost cards, they're just medium cost cards. You always want to wait and then counter push and gain that elixir advantage. Even if that means you waste some elixir, it's okay. If you're going to place anything you want to place, maybe one Valkyrie or one Musketeer or one Goblin, Spear Goblin, placement, and that's just to get a few pot shots out on the turret while you are building up more elixir and waiting for him to do something so you can counter push. This isn't exactly an easy deck to use, but if you use it correctly, especially at lower levels, I think it can be very successful. And again, this isn't necessarily a deck I recommend. There are some changes that I would make to it. Um, I don't know exactly what those changes would be. I haven't really tinkered around with it too much, especially since I don't know what Breland has as far as available to him. But there's just no defense for this, which has been his biggest issue. And again, some viable defenses are the archer, the goblins, the skeletons, a cannon, anything along those lines, the tombstone. Those are all really good cards for defense. Any spells, the zap is a pretty good card for defense as well. Low cost, kind of stops them and, stuns them briefly. So when you're making a deck, you want to ensure that you're using a solid, rounded deck. You don't just want to always be using, oh, this is a really tanky card, or this, some cards are obviously better than others, but not all. You can't use all good mid-range cards. You need to have some lower level cards as well, just for that immediate defense. But anyways, those are just kind of my thoughts about the deck, how I played it, watching him play it, and some mistakes that you might make, and hopefully some tips and tricks on elixir conservation. One thing that I see a lot of people not doing is they don't try and pull enemy troops to the center. And pulling enemy troops to the center is always a very, very important aspect of elixir conservation. This is just another one I've done. And this one was kind of hard because this guy constantly targeted my elixir pump, which I don't like. But you'll notice that when I did it at my higher level, you are trying to draw people to the center. When you draw them to the center, it allows both side towers to attack. And that really is the ideal of what you want. And you'll see that even in this deck with my golem and whatnot, I have some low-level troops simply because they really help to defend against or low elixir cost troops, because they help defend against things like the prince, which is always a prominent viable threat. The golem strategy is obviously a different strategy, but the thing to note is you're placing your troops in the middle. You're not just continuing on with, you're not just placing them in front of your tower. You really want to pull them into the middle. It takes them longer to attack you, and it gives the turret more time to deal that damage. So, but anyways, that was my thoughts about this deck for my buddy Breland. Some tips and tricks maybe on how to use it if you don't have a vast majority of cards available to you, and maybe you have low level epics but you got really good normals. These are the kind of things you want to think about. Mine obviously are a little bit higher than his, but it is what it is. He will continue to improve, and hopefully he will surpass me, because that's what you always want, is your buddies to get better than you, and then you guys can trash talk and you can be like, no, this is what I'm going to beat you now. Trash talk, it's fun, makes the game more enjoyable. But anyways, those are my thoughts, tips, tricks. If you like it, let me know, comment, like it, comment it, tell me what you think, and we'll see you guys next time. Thanks.